City Council member Jessica Lappin, Cornell's project was approved by the City Council. It will move on to the Borough Board where Cornell will sign the lease with the city. You were all emailed the letter Cornell prepared to City Council member Lappin spelling out the items agreed to. City Council voted on these items in a formal resolution. And we will share this resolution with you when we receive it. Throughout the process, Cornell has written 4 different promissory letters to the Community Board 8, Borough President, City Planning Commission, and the City Council. In combination, these letters detail all the agreements that Cornell has made to our community. Although we never got a formal community benefit agreement, all these promises will be memorialized in the lease with the city, and they will be binding with the city. There will also be a task force comprised of residents, elected officials, and Cornell set up to establish open communications during each of the 48-month stretch of construction as Cornell builds its campus, and there will be a Cornell liaison going forward. Overall, regarding the terms we requested, there were some gains, but there's still work to do. The next governmental body to negotiate with Cornell is RICC. RICC's new president, Charlene Indelicato, and her team are responsible to ensure that the island's infrastructure and services have enough shared resources to handle the increased pressure from the construction and the increased population. I met with her the week she arrived. I'm convinced that she has a good handle on our needs, and she will negotiate aggressively for the best interest of the island. A small group of board members are meeting with her next week to give her our term sheet and the remaining infrastructure and service items on the list that are now in RICC's court. We will find out which of these things are RICC's responsibility, which we can help with, and which we need to continue to go after ourselves. We will continue to meet with other government officials as the need arises. You might know that the board has put in well over 1,000 collective hours of time in research, meetings, and negotiations with Cornell. All of you have stepped up at various times when we asked for special action. Thank you. I want to commend 2 non-board members, Dave Evans and Nina Loveland, who read the full 800-page DEIS, along with Mark Lyon, and gave their comments. Lynn was involved with that as well, I believe. You read that whole 800-page? Adek Applebaum gave us valuable construction advice.
I just mentioned.
Dave, we just did a shout out to you.
Just awarded that.
Thank you.
Lots of people testified at more than one hearing and were invaluable in their push at the right time. Ali Swari was very helpful in testifying about the medical effects of trucking down Main Street. Dave Evans, an active RICC Common Council member, and Lynn Shinazaki and other active Common Council members stood out in their work with the board, giving as much time as they could provide with their expertise and insights. Larry Parness, the 3rd community board member with me and Jeff Escobar, is an expert in zoning. He knows ULURP as well as anyone and is an invaluable strategist. He has been our advisor. Community Board 8 will be holding a very important meeting on Roosevelt Island at 6:30 p.m. this Thursday, May 30th, to continue talks about the Cornell project and issues important to our island. Community Board 8 will be holding a very important meeting on Roosevelt Island. It's Thursday, May 30th, to continue talks about Cornell project and issues important to our island. I urge you and your organization members to show up for a lively discussion. Please mark your calendars for Thursday, this Thursday, May 30th at 6:30.
Next Thursday.
Next
Show up.
Thursday.
It's this Thursday.
No, it's next
Is it
Thursday.
next?
Yeah.
Next
30th.
Thursday.
It's next.
A week from today. Today's
Thursday.
Thursday.
I'm sorry, everybody. Okay,
A week
please
from
hold,
from
a
Thursday.
week from Thursday at 6:30. Please hold your questions to the end. You can also email us any questions at, you know our email address, ricommunitycoalition@gmail.com. Now I will turn our meetings over to the other directors for more details.
Well, good evening. My name is Linda Heimer, and I'm going to give you an overview of what we've been through. We started dealing with Cornell in September of last year, and it's been a very long 9 months of labor. But we did give birth to some agreements with Cornell and with the city, and I don't think that would have happened, well, I know it wouldn't have happened if RICC had not formed this coalition. So thanks to all of you for your help for that. As you know, the entire city is in favor of this project because of the jobs and the tax revenues it's going to bring and the technical innovations it'll bring to the city. But Roosevelt Island residents are the only ones that are going to bear the brunt of this and be affected adversely for the next over the next 25-year period. So we've kind of played the role of noisy advocates and really have had nothing but the strength of numbers of our 37 member organizations and that we represent, all of you, and a lot of persistence to negotiate with. At times it's been a rather lonely and frustrating journey. We were hoping the ULIP process would protect us more than it has. There were several members of the governing bodies we met with who testified that they had a genuine concern for the issues we raised, but either they only played an advisory role, such as the case of CB8 and the Borough President's Office, or some issues were not in the purview of their governing body, or they were outvoted by those who wanted this project to go forward without any constraint. So on the positive side, we have formed relationships with Cornell executives, which we intend to continue well into the future for the benefit of all concerned. And as Ellen told you, several of our wins will be memorialized in the lease between Cornell and the city. Others are going to speak about them in detail in a few moments, but even though we've made gains, we focus on the things that we are still concerned about, so there'll be more mention of those. My personal pet peeve in all of this is that Cornell is one of the richest universities in the country, on the planet, and yet they have a reputation of giving as little as possible to the communities in which they build. The city has given them land of worth $300 million, plus $100 million for infrastructure. They have received $355 million and $155 million from alumni to build this project. And they have an endowment of $5 billion. And yet, they cite expense as one of the reasons they cannot barge more than 40% to build on our site. They can't build a cement plant, which would reduce air pollution from cement trucks on the site. And they say they can't contribute to RICC for the services they'll be using and the island infrastructure that they will be straining. So in essence, it's our health, safety, and well-being and their money. Our purpose here tonight is to update you on all the issues that you can be, so that you can be informed when you have a moment of influence. For example, when a member of the press visits the island for more information about the project, if you're with a fellow member of your organization who's interested but are not informed about the issues, when you're with local politicians or other people with influence you might know, it's important to use every opportunity to further our case. Much of what Cornell has agreed to is vague with little promise of accountability, especially when it comes to issues of health and safety. RICC has never tried to stop this project, but we must continue to fight for protections if we're going to survive it. So now Ali Shwari is going to tell you why we need more protection than what has already been agreed to.
Linda? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Here.
My name is Ali Shwari, and I have lived on Roosevelt Island
since 1977. I'm a retired physician and my specialty is pulmonary and preventive medicine. As you know, Roosevelt Island is a narrow strip of land with one street down the middle. This street is about 30 feet wide and is bordered on both sides 40% of the way by buildings. Construction of the Cornell campus, as well as the first of 3 large residential buildings, will start next year with completion in about 25 years. And I'd like to emphasize that the construction of the residential buildings is flying under the radar. We don't hear a peep from anybody about it, and that's going to add to the car and truck traffic on the island. They're going to start in 2 months. They've already started removing trees. And you can imagine what will happen when Cornell starts their construction project early next year. So I want to bring up, I want to tell the audience that nobody is talking about the 3 huge residential buildings that will start very soon. One of them will start very soon. Now, the current plan, as detailed in the environmental impact statement, called for using heavy diesel burning trucks to remove debris and bring in construction material. Conservative estimate envisions an average of 74 single truck trips per day and a total of more than 75,000 truck trips down Main Street for the next 4 years. Diesel exhaust contains about 40 harmful chemicals, many of them carcinogenic, such as benzene, mercury compounds, formaldehyde, arsenic, toluene, and styrene. It also contains the fine particulate matter, which is the major component of soot. As we breathe, the toxic gases and microscopic particles are drawn deep into the lungs and contribute to a range of acute health problems, such as headache, coughing, nausea, dizziness, and irritation of the eyes and throat. Long-term exposure can lead to chronic, more serious health problems, such as lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, as well as exacerbation of asthma, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema. Because our street is surrounded by buildings, creating what's called a canyon effect, these toxic gases will take longer to disperse, and thus exposing island residents to these pollutants for longer periods of time. Children, the elderly, and people with heart and lung problems are particularly at risk. To mitigate these health risks, Cornell should seriously consider the use of barges and truck ferries instead of diesel-burning trucks. The risks to our safety, health, and quality of life are too great for us to remain passive and silent while a solution is readily available. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'd like to...
Oh, you're going to say
Later?
Yeah.
Later, okay.
Thank you. Judy and Alex.
Is it okay if I stand up? Why not? Okay. When Ellen was handing out medals to our non-board members who were heavy contributors, I think I didn't hear you say, Ellen, a medal to Adek Applebaum, who was
She did.
She did? Okay,
I
I'm
did.
sorry. I didn't hear it, Ellen. I'm Judy Buck. I'm the secretary of RICC. And with our resident cost analysis engineer, Adek Applebaum, I'm going to update our most urgent issue, which is trucks, barging, and cement. As you all certainly know by now, Cornell has agreed to reduce the number of construction trucks by 40%. Sounds like good news, but it is our understanding that all cement will still be transported by truck, and it is these diesel-fueled cement trucks that do the most damage. The best solution for the community would be the installation of a temporary cement plant at Cornell's site, which would be supplied by barge materials. Cornell, however, remains adamant that no such installation will take place. I hope you'll bear with me. I'm quickly going to go through the history of what we've been talking about all this time and the current status. and you know most of it by heart. The community has repeatedly voiced its fears that trucks will bring intolerable levels of noise, damaging vibration, noxious air pollution, probable damage to the ramp in Main Street, congestion that can delay emergency vehicles, continual disruption to residents, most of whom live on Main Street. Truck traffic also poses a menace to children, the elderly, and the disabled who are attempting to cross Main Street. Originally, Cornell stated their estimate of trucks to be about 86 per day. Their final environmental impact statement, produced not long ago, reduced that figure considerably to 67 trucks or 134 trips per day, and this figure was at peak time, third quarter of 2015. That reduction would bring the number down to approximately 80 truck trips a day, and this level is far too great for our narrow little road to handle. Our resident cost analysis engineer, Adek Appelbaum, has indicated that Cornell would have known all along of the need to barge materials. There'll be a pause. He pointed out the role of barging in the construction of the United Nations, Co-op City, NYU's Uptown dorms, and more recently, the World Trade Center. Mr. Appelbaum further pointed out that with the combined use of barging at an on-site plant, the number of trucks could be virtually eliminated. Mr. Appelbaum, who has high-level security clearance, was not allowed to view construction plans. And now let me read you the status. After months of exploration and analysis and meetings, Cornell, in its May 2nd, 2013 letter to Jessica Lappin, agreed to barge certain materials, and this is their language. Building material not reused on the project site will be removed by barge. Nearly all bulk materials will be delivered and removed by barge. Heavy materials, such as steel, curtain wall, and large equipment will also be delivered by barge. Cornell also commits to working closely with its development partners, and I guess that means Technion University, to encourage the use of precast concrete in lieu of concrete poured on site. Mr. Appelbaum suggests that the use of precast is traditionally limited to 6 floors, that precast in buildings used as flooring can vibrate, and that slabs must be cut to fit, which creates a great deal of dust on site. In Mr. Appelbaum's opinion, this technique is unsuitable to large developments, and he would be surprised if it's actually used. And here's our request. RICC requests that Cornell utilize barging to a far greater degree and in combination with an on-site cement plant. That Cornell state the specific types and numbers of trucks in their estimate. That Cornell restate the number of truck trips per day, approximately, that they will need for what they don't barge. Again, on the recommendation of Mr. Appelbaum, RICC has repeatedly urged this combined use of barging and an on-site cement plant. And I'm going to ask Mr. Appelbaum to discuss this now.
Can I sit on the edge? Sure. You don't mind? Well, Judy, after such build-up, I better say something smart, or else I'll be thrown out of here. My name is Adek with an unspellable last name, so I won't bother. I have been a project manager and cost engineer. Actually, one of the people who formulated cost engineering as a branch of civil engineering for the last 20 years. I've worked with the Corps of Engineers on many major projects, more expensive and more extensive than Cornell. From the very beginning, when we found out that Cornell wants to bring in ready-mix or in-transit mixed concrete, it stood out like a sore thumb, and I immediately notified my group that they should not think of trucks, but barging. But they somehow split the barging from trucking. So the way I understand it now, they want to barge ready-mix trucks, which is like going back to using horses for taxis. It just doesn't make any sense. Once you bring in, barging is very useful to bring in raw material but the mixture of the raw material, which is cement, gravel, additives, and so on, should be done on site. It's good for Cornell because they'll be able to have the cement or the proper mixture of cement. It varies for various uses at a time when they need it without affecting. So eliminating 40% of the trucking is like bringing in a big truck to carry 2 ounces of liquid. It can't be separated. If a barge is used, it should be used for raw material, and the raw material should be mixed on site, which would be release the least amount of damaging material. No gases, no truck damage from vibration, and so on. And sooner or later, even though Cornell thinks that barging is a nice window dressing opportunity, they will realize, I believe, that barging with a mixed plant is totally inseparable. One becomes economical only if the other is part of it. So we should try to enforce or try to demand that the two be put as a one unit and not 2 separate items. You can use barging for large precast, but a lot of precast on this project is impractical. You can't precast foundations, you can't precast pile caps, you can't precast slabs, because for an institution like that, as Judy said, creates a lot of vibration and is not useful for public spaces. It may be used on small projects for apartments, but that too requires concrete on top of the precast. We could eliminate not 40%, not 20%, not even 80% of the concrete trucking if we stick to the idea that we will bring in only raw material and manufacture it on the site. There's plenty of room to have a temporary plant on the site. It would turn out to be economical. I think Judy's list says 1% more, but it's 1% plus or minus. We could save 1 or 2%, or we can have an extra cost of 2%. But the fact is the well-being for the community would be 100%. No trucks except for lightweight deliveries such as hardware or anything boxed could be delivered by a truck, and that would be acceptable, I believe. But the cement is the biggest problem that stands out in the entire planning of the project. I believe that Cornell is not dumb enough to realize that this is a step backward. Plants have been used, temporary plants have been used for all major projects. The American Army Corps of Engineers uses cement plants every time they build a big project. It's not a dream, it's not a 25th century ideal, it's current, it's available and usable and very effective. Why Cornell is using it as a window dressing, I have not been able to figure out. It is good management, it's good for Cornell, it's good for the island, and it's good for the schedule, which, by the way, may be hampered if we barge in trucks who may be rejected because they've been mixing the concrete for too long. So using barging is great, but bringing in trucks on barges in order to mix the concrete, which they do in transit, may be rejected because they had to be on the barge for too long. The city inspector always on site, and he determines which concrete has been overmixed, if you will, and which is not used. So not only would we create a problem with having it when we need it, but also the fact that it would be rejected, and therefore we would be short of concrete, we meaning Cornell and the project, and therefore creating other problems. We urge, and I've done that from the beginning, that barging and a plant be handled as one item. They cannot be separated. They could be used, barging could be used for other things besides concrete, and they could deliver other heavy material, a lot of precast, but I don't know, they never allowed us to see the plans, so I don't know how much precast there will be and how much precast this institution will allow to incorporate in the design. The bottom line is we may think of barging, but not as window dressing to keep the community quiet, but if we don't combine it with raw material only, but keep it separate as a sort of, by the way, we'll have a barge, but we won't use it efficiently. That is unacceptable, and we should try to convince Cornell that this is the proper way to do it. It's not something out of this world. It's been done on major projects in New York City, and the reason it isn't used in New York as often is because of lack of space. Here we have 12 acres. We could easily put up a plant and then dismantle it. The cost is minimal in relation to the total project cost. We even went so far as to get a proposal from a ready-mix concrete company, who is willing to put up this temporary plant if they get the material delivered to it. So again, the bottom line, very simple solution, barging and concrete mixing should be one item, not two separate items. It is good for the community, it's good for Cornell, it will help them keep the schedule, which by the way is very primitive at this point, and the estimates that they use for number of trucks and number of disturbances and so on is based on something which is not professionally well prepared. So the schedule, actually if you want to extend it, schedule, creation of the ready-mixed concrete on site and barging are really one item, not three. And I've said that before, I repeat it again, I hope it is clear. It's as clear as I can make it sitting down here, and I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you very much. I don't expect.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to talk about parking. Cornell's previous plans for parking called for up to 500 parking spaces to be built in phase 1 at Cornell's discretion. Cornell rejected the idea of expanding Motorgate. Because limited parking on campus will only increase demand on spaces elsewhere on Roosevelt Island, RICC repeatedly requested that in anticipation of an eventual addition of 7,000 residents and visitors to the island, a minimum of 500 spaces be built in phase 1. RICC also requested a study to determine parking impact on the community and the need to expand Motorgate prior to construction of phase 2. How many have tried parking in Motorgate yesterday, for instance? I was all the way in the top with the last 10 spots in the whole entire place. That's scary. RICC has approved a smart parking system for the entire island, including Motorgate, which will provide real-time parking usage data before, during, and after construction. We asked Cornell adopt this state-of-the-art system in its own parking facility and use this information to create a formula with RICC to determine if and when parking on the island reaches capacity and when more spaces are needed. There are 1,800 total spaces in Motorgate. Roof parking is reserved for Roosevelt Landing residents. Since real-time parking figures will be available shortly, a parking study should be initiated now. Sensors will be installed on the street, and a counter will be installed at Motorgate. RICC asks that Cornell clarify whether the parking spaces around the campus will be available to the public and be RICC metered spaces. We also requested that Cornell specify whether Cornell's parking facilities will be usable by the general public or islanders under any circumstances for long or short-term parking. The status. Cornell Tech will not provide parking spaces in Phase 1 to accommodate their increased number of cars on the island. The university states it will not add unnecessary parking to the campus because parking spaces will attract cars. Cornell agrees to analyze parking needs with the corporate co-location and executive education center hotel partners. Cornell will undertake a formal evaluation of parking conditions on campus and island when campus has developed 50% of total planned square footage, and if necessary, will include parking in later phases of development. Cornell will encourage walking and biking. Our request. RICC urges that a comprehensive parking study begin immediately. Caucusing with corporate co-location developers with an interest in minimizing construction expenses will result in the least expensive building plan, not one that necessarily meets the needs of the community. Unless Cornell is required to address the parking issues that the community will face now and down the road, it will make parking decisions for our entire community, not just for its own campus. And we're talking about purpose funds.
I'm telling you, Aaron, always, are you done?
No, public purpose funds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You want to talk about air and noise, and I'll find out public purposes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Take it away. Linda's going to talk about air and noise.
I just want to clarify something. When we refer to the term sheet, we're referring, if you remember at our first meeting, we had sheets up on the walls that you could look at that was a compilation of everything that the member organizations asked for, what was important and so forth. That term sheet has changed every single time we meet with Cornell or we go to the City Planning Commission or some other governmental body. This last one that we're reading off of today was finished this morning. So it's very up to date, and we will be emailing this to all our members. So you will see it in detail. And the way we arranged it is what the issue is, the history of it, the status right now with Cornell and the city, and what we request. And when we get to what we request, it's usually of RICC, because RICC is the next step, as Ellen had said initially in her first comments, in this process. So we will continue to meet, RICC will continue to meet with Cornell, and some of these things we will work out with them, but most of the hard items will be negotiated at this point by RICC, so that's what the request is. So as we go through this, you're going to hear history, status, request. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about air pollution, which of course we're deeply concerned about, and noise pollution because of the trucks, particularly diesel trucks. And Ali went through the reasons as to why. I'm not going to go through all that again, but all the carcinogens and whatever. Okay, so a dozen years ago, I was part of an activist group called RICC. We hired environmentalists to study the air quality here. And because of the Con Ed plant at the time, it's now Keystone, and because of the Queensboro Bridge, which is now the Koch Bridge, they said that we were already at dangerous levels of air toxicity. You add to that all these diesel trucks that will be coming in, and we're going to be really at dangerous health conditions. So RICC has urgently and repeatedly requested air and noise monitoring throughout the island's trucking corridor along Main Street and during the entire construction period. Okay, this is what the status is so far. Cornell will undertake air quality monitoring in accordance with environmental law. This will include an independent third-party air monitoring firm to collect samples before, during, and after asbestos abatement, and work zone air monitoring for lead if necessary to protect workers. At RICC's urging, on-site monitoring equipment will be retained throughout the construction process. Originally, they had just agreed to do it during demolition of the Goldwater Hospital, but we kept pushing them and now, so that was a win for us. It then goes on to talk about all the mitigations that are required by law. Well, okay, so law requires that they do certain things, and you can read that when you get this, when we email it to you. But then beyond adherence to local law, and also at RICC's urging, they agreed to post air quality results on a construction website so it can be monitored regularly. Now, our request is that the community appreciate these measures, but note that they are limited to the construction site. In view of the hazards posed by air pollution, we urge that RICC or New York City provide an independent air quality monitoring service for Main Street throughout the construction process. So in other words, they've agreed to do air monitoring on their site, but not throughout Main Street, and we're concerned because that's where we live. All right, now, as far as noise pollution, the history of that is that there will be many years of construction-related noise, and we feel it will be a hardship, especially since the construction will be at the same time as the Southtown buildings, 7, 8, and 9, which Ali referred to. For residents who remain on the island all day, this will be a constant irritant. Cornell declined a request for noise monitoring on Main Street. Because current plans call for an 11-hour workday from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., RICC requested limitation of construction hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., which was an 8-hour workday. This was rejected. We then compromised, requesting limitation of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays with Saturday construction limited to emergencies. This added 2 hours to the day, and that was ignored. So the current status is that Cornell has agreed to minimize construction noise levels by using equipment that meets New York City control codes. And then they go on to say what all those code requirements are. Our request. RICC will request that Cornell allow 2 relatively unobstructed hours, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, to allow school buses through. Exact hours to be determined in consultation with the island schools, because as you well know, there are a lot of yellow buses on the island at certain hours. Add construction trucks to that, and it's going to be very difficult. So in essence, we lost that battle as far as noise. That was something that was kind of important to me because I'm a night owl and I go to bed late and get up late. So 6 a.m. trucks I'm not going to be too happy with. And also, I think it will, over a 25-year period, I think it can affect people's health if they're not getting enough sleep. So it's not just me, it's many others, especially those of us who face Main Street, which I do too. So I kind of tried to fight that one, but I do understand they say they want to come early to fight, other traffic, and that's their rationale, and they just wouldn't budge on that one. So that's it for air and noise monitoring.
Now we're talking about public purpose funds. This was a good one. We had been told by everybody before we started, every elected official, don't even bother to try to ask for money, because Cornell has said outright they're not giving money. And we said, well, they're coming to us, we're going to ask for money anyway. And we did. And they said, we're not giving you money. So we kept asking. We asked and we asked and we asked in different forms, and we still didn't get any money. We're very disappointed. What we have said consistently to Cornell is that they are going to be using our infrastructure. They're going to be putting pressure on our infrastructure, costing RICC money. Our public purpose fund comes from RICC, and if RICC is using that public purpose fund money to fund infrastructure needs of the island that is caused by Cornell's excess pressure on the infrastructure, then we lose our public purpose fund because of them. So we wanted that public purpose fund replaced into the future. Well, they're not doing it, at least not now. I don't think that RICC will be negotiating that for us, but the best we can hope for at this point is, I believe, is that RICC will negotiate for enough benefits for the island that we will not lose the present public purpose fund that we have. We had a vague promise that if we could come up with enough proof of how all the buildings have donated to the public purpose fund, that Cornell would give us the use, might be convinced to give us the use of their fundraisers for advice and guidance and help with getting grants for, to replenish our public purpose funds that way. But they never came through with that either. Pretty much Cornell has been really very stingy with, and holding their money really close. We believe that Cornell is, has money to spend. They're raising money to spend. They're getting donations all the time. They should be willing to provide money to island infrastructure. They should be sharing their resources with the island in some way. A good faith effort to be good neighbors with us, with the needs of our social service organizations and our educational institutions. What they have offered, and and we need to get as much as we can from this offer, is that they are an educational institution and their mission is to spread education to the community. So they will give us educational programs. So if we could get them to give as many educational programs as possible, then maybe they will be giving their share of at least the equivalent of a public purpose fund grant, possibly. I mean, that's what we can hope for, but we will be continuing to push for public purpose funds as much as we can in the media, shaming them, embarrassing them, giving them, and requesting that they be good neighbors and help us with our needs. Okay. So now we have
Mark is going to speak about ABAC.
Right. I'm standing in for Jonathan, who was not able to be here tonight. Those of you who live on the island, I'm certain, are familiar with the convenience of the ABAC system. It was one of the original, more innovative ways of dealing with the transit issues here on the island. And it helps to reduce the traffic volume on the island. One of the things that has not been implemented and is not part of the current plan on the Cornell side is use of the ABAC system. They are looking to continue trucking their waste. They are looking at ways, based on the information they've given so far, to minimize the amount of waste that has to be trucked out. But currently their plans will call for all of their garbage and all their recyclables to be loaded onto trucks and driven out. This is a different trucking concern than the immediate construction need. This is a long-term, permanent trucking issue that's going to result in more traffic on Main Street, particularly of large garbage type vehicles. So one of the things that we are pushing for is to determine whether it is feasible to connect their project with the ABAC system. They have a couple of objections. One of the prime objections that they have is that they have an obligation to recycle, and that the ABAC system only has one stream of waste, so it cannot accept recyclables and keep them separate. It is possible to upgrade the ABAC system. It has been done in other locations where such a system is in place. And so we are pushing for the idea of studying whether that can be done with our system. Also whether our system is capable of handling the load that would be generated by an additional facility that size. We don't have firm information about whether that is possible yet, but we are working on that. And we are also pushing them to help study it as part of their development plans. I think it would benefit everyone on their project, all their residents and all their faculty, and even the commercial tenants, to enjoy the same benefits of the ABAC system that we do. It does make disposal of garbage much cleaner and keeps the area looking very nice. So, we think that would be a tangible connection and investment in island infrastructure that would also connect them to the rest of the island in more than just the roads that they travel over. They would have a further investment in the actual functioning of the island.
And isn't it true that other developments that come in also have extended our ABAC system for trash and waste removal?
Right. So all the residential buildings that are connected that RICC has approved have been connected to the system, and I believe the new buildings are also being connected as well.
So a terrific precedent.
Exactly, and it is an expandable system. It was designed that way. It is becoming an older system, and it's going to need care. But having Cornell part of the process of upgrading and caring for that system will help them invest in the island going forward, and will help keep them involved in making certain that our roads and our other things are taken care of.
Thank you.
All right, Joyce.
Okay, a few things. First of all, policing. We have 3 different types of security needs on Roosevelt Island. One of them, of course, is homeland security. We have a number of locations that are potential targets that could be at risk. And unfortunately, when we have a world-class facility on Roosevelt Island, we are no longer a sleepy little town. We're now on the world stage. And also with the entry of Technion University, in particular, where there is a certain amount of antipathy for their involvement with weaponry and other issues in the Middle East, we could be at greater risk than we've faced previously as a small residential community. So Homeland Security is one of our major issues, and they seem to have taken steps to connect with the with Homeland Security and the necessary entities to look at what our needs are in that regard. They also have made some contact with the NYPD, and as you all probably know, we have a grand total of 24 hours out of 168 possible hours that we're patrolled by the NYPD on Roosevelt Island. So we're patrolled 15% of the time that most communities are patrolled by NYPD. And the likelihood that that will change, regardless of the interaction that they are claiming with NYPD, is unlikely, simply because unless there is a significant increase in the amount of funding that goes to the precinct itself, the precinct has to deploy its manpower in a fashion that's consistent with where the dangers lie within the precinct itself, within the overall precinct. So we've had this problem for years, and we've struggled to get a patrol officer here, even for 3 short, 3 8-hour shifts throughout an entire week. So it's pretty slim. The other issue is public safety. Public safety is our first responder in case of any emergencies. And the U.S. Department of Justice indicates that the average policing for Manhattan would be an average of 47 officers for a community of, for a population of, for every 10,000 in population. And to date, we have 37 officers for a population of approximately 14,000. So we're already under-policed significantly, and our needs for additional policing are going to grow considerably. And we haven't seen any commitment by any entity so far, whether it be through Community Board 8 or through the borough president. We haven't seen any commitment to stepping up and increasing the NYPD presence here. We've asked them to put 2 permanent police booths on Roosevelt Island that will be manned 24/7. And we think that that's the least that they could do in terms of stepping up and giving us a police presence. One of the issues is that the city of New York is making a huge amount of tax revenue. The reason to bring Cornell here is to increase jobs and to expand commerce here in New York City. And that in and of itself is going to be creating additional tax revenue for the city. So the city is giving away its land for free, and the policing and the services that are going to be necessary in order to support Cornell's placement here are all going to have to come from Roosevelt Island, where we're, our land leases are supporting services. And I wish I could tell you that there was more going on in terms of policing, but that's where it stands right now. Recreational fields, okay, we have 14,000 folks. They're bringing in another 7,000 folks. As you all know, we have trouble with our kids being able to play on our fields even today. There's so much corporate league activity on our fields that our kids can't go out at night and play baseball, pick up a game, go out and practice with their dad so that they could learn how to pitch and try out to be the pitcher for their little league team. We don't have enough facilities. If, based on our current population, the additional recreational facilities that should be coming to Roosevelt Island with the population increase of Cornell should be at least one soccer field, one little league field, and 3 tennis courts. Instead, we're getting none. When we indicated that they were going to be utilizing our recreational fields, they indicate and that they were not providing any recreation whatsoever in the buildings that they were building. All of a sudden, they stated that they would look into putting some gyms or whatever for their, for their residents. It's unlikely that those gyms will be available to the community, so they're going to be using the community's fields, and they're going to create some gyms, for their own folks. Are we going to be able to use their gyms? Probably not. So there seems to be a little difficulty in this concept of fairness and being a good neighbor. The other has to do with school support, and Jessica Lappin has happily announced that Cornell is going to adopt the school. Unfortunately, we have seen nothing indicating what adopting the school means. So we don't know what that is. We do know that Cornell has indicated that they will be creating a pilot program with 4 schools in New York City, and one of them will be PSIS 217. In the meetings that we've had with Cornell and the school, the programming that we discussed had more to do with the middle school and the middle school only, and more to do with technology. It started out being STEM courses, which are, someone's going to help me out here, science, technology,
engineering, and math.
Engineering and math. Okay, so fairly comprehensive. And as we became more involved in discussions, it seemed to be narrowed down to more focused on technology and specifically to middle school rather than all of the children beginning in the elementary years. So we've heard the term adopt the school. We don't know what that means. The principal doesn't know what that means. And so we really have nothing concrete that Cornell has come up with in following up with their mandate for education. Now, the mandate for education seems to be that they are required by the city of New York to benefit 10,000 children throughout the city of New York. And it appears that how they're going to reach out to those 10,000 children is to support other programs that currently are available, such as Urban Advantage, which is Girls That Code. In fact, Girls That Code, thanks to Jonathan Kalkin, I might add, and his insistence and his connection with them, Girls That Code will be providing a program here on Roosevelt Island this summer for 6th graders going to the 7th grade and 7th graders going to the 8th grade. So that's certainly of great benefit. And that's consistent with technology. But when they say that they're going to reach out to 10,000 children, that doesn't mean that Cornell is going to have classes for 10,000 children in their school. It means that they're going to support and add their expertise to some of the existing programs that are already out there in the city of New York, and perhaps being involved in those programs, and spearheading some change in those programs.
Just mention her CBA meeting.
We're doing, I'm sorry?
The principal will be meeting with CBA to present on June 10th.
Yeah, okay.
So I know we have some CBA members here.
Right. So I think we're going to do question and answer.
We're going to do question and answer. I just want to piggyback on what Joyce said about the school. Their agreement to do adopt the school actually came at the very last minute, probably 30 minutes or less before the city council voted, the city council land use committee voted, and it came as a result of the testimony we gave. Nina Loveland read the testimony from the school principal, who said, you've been giving us all this lip service about adopting our school, but really all you've given us is lip service and not much else, and just a small program that's going to serve a very small group of people. What we're asking for is you to really adopt our school and give our teachers support, ongoing support for the life of the school, and give them somebody mentoring and training and ongoing support through for every grade. And they said they would do that. Finally, Jessica pushed them until they finally said, they said, okay, we'll do it, we'll really do it, and we've yet to see what they're really going to do, but I hear tell that they're looking to hire an actual educational expert that will mentor the school and mentor the teachers, and this is what I hear. Now, we haven't had our follow-up meeting yet with the Cornell team. We're probably going to do it in the middle of June, and we'll find out more about what their plans are. But all of this came out of the work that we did as a community, because if we didn't ask, they wouldn't give. If we didn't push, they wouldn't do anything. And we can see that in Manhattan when you see the community board meetings and you see the ULURE processes and the things that the community gets when they don't ask for things, and they really don't get very much. We got, considering how much work and effort we put into this. I mean, we put in thousands of hours of work, all of us combined. And, you think, well, but if we had all gone to work and worked those thousands of hours, we could probably pay for everything that Cornell is doing. But at least we got them to be a good neighbor. And now we have a possibility of having a really vibrant town-gown relationship. What they managed to do is push a lot of the decisions that they have to make, like the costs that they're going to have to promise. What they managed to do, they may actually have to produce and have to give us those things later on, like parking, for instance. But what they managed to arrange with their planning and with the ULURE, with the agreement, is to study so that it forces us to be vigilant into the future and have to spend more thousands of hours pushing them into the future. So So it just unloads the burden from Cornell onto us again. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to get it. It just means that we have to work that much harder to continue to push and be vigilant and pushy and annoying and do our work.
And informed.
So unfortunately, our work is not done. We have to continue, and we have to keep pushing them and keep watching them, and and hold them to, number one, hold them to their promises, and number two, hold them, make sure that they give us what we ask for and not let up on it. So, any questions?